Let's take a second and talk a little bit about the analytics of our website. Um, the analytics are important because we want to make our client's website successful, and by being able to have an opportunity to work with a client perhaps a year after a site has been live, the analytics will help perhaps talk you to open up conversations with your client to discuss future changes, maintenance, etc., things to watch out for. Um, because our goal is always to make our website more effective for our target users. The users deserve a rewarding experience. It's all about the user, remember. So let's take a look at W3 Schools. I often don't necessarily recommend W3 Schools as a good resource for learning about the web, but one of the things that I do like about W3 Schools is their information on browsers. Not only do they provide specific information on the different browsers, but they also, show examples of their analytics for their site. Let's take a look just about the browsers, the information that they have about the browsers. Let's click on. Let me make sure you knew how we got here. This is the very bottom of W3 Schools homepage. Okay, here's the homepage. Come all the way down to the bottom. We go to under web building. We have browsers. So let's take a look at what it says about Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer is probably the most common web browser that users use, mostly because it's the one that comes pre-installed with Windows computers. If you scroll down to the very bottom of each of the browser pages, it gives you specific information about each of the versions of the browser, and it talks about the updates. So this is really good information. If you also look here under the specific statistics, it talks to you for right now. Currently, we're in January. Well, actually, we're not in January now, but it talks about at that time, it equates for about 20% of the users that come to this website. Here's information about Firefox. Firefox is 37% of the users that come to W3 Schools. Think about the users who would even come to W3 Schools. Most likely these users are people that are web designers, web developers. So this gives you a good indication of the browsers that they're actually using. And most likely these are the users that would come to this site are those that are more progressive, users that are using browsers with more functionality, users that would actually go out and install another browser, not just use the one that's pre-installed. So down here below it talks about specific information about the different Firefox releases. Chrome, I was surprised down here when you come down to the bottom, Chrome is definitely an up-and-coming browser, 35%. What was Firefox real quick? Let's look at Firefox. Firefox is 37%. So Chrome is still just a little bit below, but it's becoming a more popular browser. And one of the things down here that I found interesting is that they're really pushing Chrome. It talks about why Chrome is different from other browsers, and this is good information, but definitely look at this. But Chrome is a browser that I often use. I still, just by habit, I use Firefox the most. Here's a link for a fun Chrome comic. I would recommend flipping through it. It talks about how it came about and some different advantages to Chrome. So anyways, they're really pushing Chrome. And then Safari. Whenever I'm on a Mac, I often use Safari, but normally I just use Firefox. I'm surprised they don't actually give you a breakdown of the Safari users on a Mac or the Safari users on a PC, for what I can see, because you can actually have Safari now for a PC, so it's not just Mac users, but that only equates to about 43%. It talks about Opera. Opera is the advantages of Opera are talked about right here. It says, if your website works in Opera, you can be certain that it's standard compliant. Simply write your pages in standard compliant code, and your site will work in all major browsers on all major platforms and operating systems. And then it talks about all the other languages that Opera supports. So often, it will be the Opera is a better browser for supporting the newer technologies that are out there. But even that being said, it's only equates for 2% of the users of this website. And then it talks about Mozilla, the project, and the different things that are within the family of Mozilla. So this is good information. And then the history of Mozilla project. You don't necessarily need to worry about Netscape anymore. It's not around. It stopped in, I think, 2007. So let's go back to the home. Specifically, let's look at statistics. So now we're looking at statistics based on the different browsers, and we already kind of touched on this. But you can, I mean, imagine getting this type of information from your client, and you find out that for their website that, let's say, Safari was the most popular browser. For some reason, the website is more drawing Mac users than PC users. So what would this type of information mean? That would mean that you would make sure that your page is most, because we can leverage our these different user agents, because a user can just determine the agent that they view their website in. So you could actually essentially tell your client, let's make sure that the Safari users have the best experience. You might find this information over here in terms of operating system interesting. For example, Windows 7, which I'm on my PC that I'm using right now here at work, I use Windows XP, but Windows 7 has become, over the last few months, very, very popular, and more popular than XP. Let's look here. Let's see. Back in May of 2011, XP was the most popular, and then it started to switch. Looks like right here they were tied. And then starting back in August of 2011, Windows 7 became the most popular. And look how long it took Windows 7 to become the most popular browser. Here, this kind of gives you an indication of around the time that Windows 7 came out, was early 2009. It took, let's see, 1 year, 2 year. It took about 2.5 years before that operating system became the most popular, or became, so it took users that long of time before they kind of cut up with that. Vista really didn't ever really catch off, in terms of an operating system. But so the main two operating systems are XP and Windows 7. You can also see the Mac users currently only equate for about 9% of the users. I mean, this is a pretty good average. I've heard that only about 10% of the computer users out there are Mac, but over the next few years, I'm guessing that this number will be increasing, not just for this site, but for all sites. Good information. Look at the amount of mobile users. Currently only 1% of the sites viewed. Now this is just for this site. That doesn't mean that for all the internet only 1% of the people out there view it in terms of mobile, but for this site specifically. So what if you were to find out, we can go ahead and go over to our mobile page. What if you were to find out that your site is viewed by quite a bit of mobile users? Like right now, this site is only viewed about 1% of its viewers are mobile. Then you would then make decisions on designing your website more for mobile users, to make sure that your mobile users were having a good experience. And then it gives you a breakdown of the different devices, mobile devices. Most likely the ones you'll be looking at these days are Android or iPhone. But iPad, obviously, in terms of mobile, iPad's also considered a mobile device, and it's becoming more prevalent as well. And then others, those would probably like the non-smartphone type stuff. So this is good information as well. And then let's pop back up to display. This just talks about color and the monitor size. Most people view, with the newer widescreen type monitors, this is how they're viewing their page. This is the amount of pixels that they see, and that's not with this window, as I have my window resized for recording purposes, but normally this is actually what I have mine set at as well. So this just gives you a breakdown of the users of this site and how they have their monitor size set up and their screen resolution. And then here you can look at the different colors that they're using. Most people 24 to 32 bits hardware, and they're able to see this many different colors. So that would give you some information if you found out that most of your users are on older computers and they're only having perhaps 8-bit of color, or 256 colors. So that would help you to determine the colors that you would choose for your site. Then you can go here to visit more information about color display. So yeah, I just wanted to introduce this resource to you because this is not exactly what you'd be getting if you were with other hosted places like Bluehost or GoDaddy. but they do give you a breakdown of the different displays. Sometimes it displays definitely statistics and operating systems, and this information could help you determine future recommendations for the site, future maintenance, perhaps sell yourself as a web site designer to your client, to encourage them to meet with you perhaps every so many months to make sure that your site is keeping up with your users and their agents. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you later.